Hi, I'm Kat Mortensen with the DC Project. The DC Project is an educational, nonpartisan group made up of women from all 50 states who advocate for the Second Amendment. They advocate for education over legislation. These women gun owners make firearms education, training, and safety their top priority.
The DC Project was an idea I had last September when I visited DC as a tourist, and a friend of mine set up a meeting with my congressman. I asked him, is there something that I can do as a professional shooter to reach out to the legislators? We're here to be a face and a story of the gun owners of America and Second Amendment supporters. This is where I hope it goes for all the 50 women, that at least they know their face, they know their name, and they know their story. This is blowing my mind. We are the DC Project. We are 50 women, one from every state, here to meet our legislators and establish relationships with their offices to provide a real face and a real story of a real gun owner and a Second Amendment supporter. This is powerful, being in the nation's capital and having put so much time and effort into this trip, and the girls they've done amazing.
I am the Second Amendment.
I've been a big fan of these women for several years as I've watched them grow to become an influential voice in the Second Amendment community. One of their top line messages is that the Second Amendment is for everyone. Joining me now is Gina Roberts. She's a California delegate for the DC Project. Gina has been a competitive shooter for 54 years, and she also just happens to be a transgender woman.
Well, hi, Kat. Thanks for having me here.
So, Gina, what have been some of your experiences that you have seen in terms of the diversity in the community? How were you welcomed in as a transgender woman? What was that like for you?
Well, the gun community has been amazingly accepting. There are people that have other stories, but my acceptance has been pretty amazing. I've been a competitive shooter for a long time. I've been a trainer for a long time. I've been an instructor for a long time. And, I've been attending SHOT Shows. I've been attending SHOT Shows in my old persona and my new persona, and it really didn't make any difference. You go around the SHOT Show floor, and it's like you just absolutely see the heterogeneity of America. And basically every race, every style, every type, every kind of human being you can imagine is there, relating to each other, and it's just been an absolutely wonderful experience for me.
But because you and I have been friends for a while, Gina, I've heard your story that you actually had a really negative experience at one point with someone in the gun community. What was that all about?
Well, it was interesting. Out of maybe 60,000 people that I've met in the gun community, maybe more, maybe less, I've had trouble with exactly two. One of them I don't care about. He's just a kind of an old guy. But one time I was at a range in Pennsylvania. I'm in a really bad mood, which is what I do. I do gun yoga. I go out. I get chill on the range. And so I was out practicing my 50-yard presentations and shooting for my combat master test. And this guy came up and said, "Hey, I want to put a target up." And he didn't really look at me or anything. And he walked out. I cleared my gun and cleared the line. And he walked out and put his target up at 50 yards, which is pretty extreme for a handgun. But he set up his target and he's coming back. And he looks at me kind of closer on the way back. And he gets about 10, 15 yards from me. And he starts dropping the F-bomb. "Oh, you're one of them effing trans people, and you're ruining the whole world, and you're asking for rights that, we don't need." And he just went off. And I looked at him and I said, "Sir, I'm here to shoot. This isn't about who we are or anything like that." And he started dropping F-bombs and started being rude again, and went on for another minute. I said, "That's it. I'm tired. Let's solve this with Mortal Kombat." And that was my point right there, was to let's turn this into an education session and get him to understand that maybe what he's doing isn't the best thing for humanity. And so he said, "Well, what are we going to do? We're shooting at 50 yards." And I said, "We'll shoot headshots at 50 yards." And that was a little cocky on my part, but I think it was a good risk. And so he said, "Well, I can't shoot headshots at 50 yards." And so I presented my gun and shot 4 possibly the best rounds I've ever put down range ever. They were just felt perfect from the moment that the trigger broke. And so I put my gun back in my holster and looked at him and said, "Okay, I'm done." And he said, "Well, you only shot 4 rounds." I said, "That's all I need." And he loaded up his gun. He shot 40 rounds, something like that. And I'm watching him, and they're going all over the place. I can see him hitting the dirt, and I can see him going over the target. And I looked at, well, oh, that one might have hit paper. And so he gets done, and we walk down to the target, and sure enough, there's one hole in his target at 50 yards. And if you look at mine, there was a perfect circle, essentially a perfect circle in the chest where I'd been practicing before, and 4 perfect headshots that were centered dead center in the middle of the box. I couldn't do that ever again. I am not that good. But he looked at it, and it definitely got his attention. And he walked up to me and said, "I think we got started on the wrong foot. Can we start over again? My name's Gene. Would you go to lunch with me?"
And Gina, you must have some interesting stories from your visits on Capitol Hill. I know you say you've been to Chuck Schumer's office, Mitch McConnell. Do you have any interesting experiences there that you want to share?
Well, one thing about the DC project and what makes us very unique is that we're not there to, drag them kicking and screaming into our opinion. What we want to do is we want to educate them. We want to use, our slogan is educate, not legislate. And it very much more positive of an atmosphere in a conversation if you're not attacking somebody, if you're offering them help. And so we were in Chuck Schumer's office with a couple of my favorite people. I've always been on really great teams when we go there. And we walked out, and Chuck Schumer's chief of staff looked at us and said, "Wait a minute, you didn't ask us for anything. What was the?" I said, "No, we're here to offer a resource, establish a long-term relationship." And he was very grateful. And it was quite, it made you, we went out of there with a very good feeling. There have been some very negative reactions from some of the different staffers. I fortunately haven't had one of those, but people generally don't have a negative reaction around me. And then the same thing with Mitch McConnell's staff, a different perspective, obviously. And I met with one of my favorite people, Sabrina, who's, I can't pronounce her last name, but she's like 4'11", I'm like 6'1", and we met with 3 of his top staffers. And so Mitch McConnell, transgender woman, little tiny gorgeous young lady, and we talked about gun policy and the right way to do things. And it was just kind of the perfect dichotomy of how much of the spectrum that we show in people. And it was just that was an absolutely wonderful exchange and experience.
Well, thank you so much, Gina, for sharing your story with us. And you've been a friend to me for several years, and you actually changed my life and gave me a new understanding for what it means to be a transgender woman. And thank you. Thank you for being a friend. And thanks for all that you're doing to advocate for the Second Amendment, Gina. Thank you.
My pleasure.